Recently, I made this, and I'm calling it a short film, even though it's not really a short film. And it started off as a behind-the-scenes breakdown, like a lighting kind of thing. Got completely out of hand, and I just started having fun with it. So today, I'm going to break down what I'm calling Toast. And if you haven't seen it, I will link it in the description below. So let's get started. So the original idea for this was to have every shot as a POV, whether that was the point of view of a person or a thing, didn't matter. I just wanted every shot to be a POV. And what I decided to do was to go with a snorri cam look. And if you're not familiar with the snorri cam, it's like a vest harness that goes across your talent with a little attachment for your camera, so it's pointing directly at your talent. I don't have one. They're not the cheapest thing in the world, and I didn't want to try and rent one. So what I did was used a tripod and a vest from my broken fly cam. It worked, I guess. I don't know. It wasn't the most comfortable thing in the world. This is so uncomfortable. I don't know why. I thought of this idea. So the first shot we have is this close-up of me waking up from the world's most annoying alarm clock sound. And all I did for this was just simply lay down on the bed with my super professional snorri cam. And the lens I used here was the 50mm because I wanted to punch it in a little closer. And that's it. That's all I did for this one. I didn't move or anything like that for this particular shot. Now, I wanted this to feel like morning, even though it was an overcast day and it was raining. So I had to bring in some light, obviously, to supplement that. The first light I used was the Amaran 100XS, and it had the Lantern 90 on the front of it. This was my key/fill. It's more or less a fill in this shot, and it will be a key in the next one. Then we'll see that in just a second. But it was at 5600 Kelvin and at 100%. The next light I used is an Aperture 300X with a reflector, and that was shooting through a DIY cinefoil thing, and you can't see it in this shot, so we'll talk about it more in the next one. The third light is an Aperture 300D with a reflector as well, and that's down low, bouncing into an acrylic mirror, and that was only at like 33%, I believe. And this light is the hard light that you see on the left side of my face, because again, I wanted to emulate early morning, and so I wanted the light to come in kind of harsh and really horizontal. And the final thing I did for this shot was I put a 4x floppy and a black poster board flag on camera right, and that was to prevent light from bouncing off the walls and filling in the right side of my face on shadow side a little too much. That way I can have a little more contrast. I also added haze on this one, but I was really struggling to get everything done in a timely manner. So this is the only shot that I used haze in, and I just stopped using it after that. So yeah, I used it on this one. So then we have this medium close-up still lying on the bed. We have a couple cuts in between, and then I finally sit up out of the bed. And this is the first shot where you can see that it's a POV sort of snorri cam because the camera's following me the entire time I'm sitting up. The camera stayed in the same exact position as the previous shot on the 50mm. The only thing I did was swapped out the lens for the 20. That way it's obviously a lot wider. And this is where you can see what I did with the 300X with the reflector. All the other lighting and the flags, everything remained the same, but you can actually see what the 300X is doing. Now I'm in the bathroom, and this is the last shot that I used the snorri cam on because it was super painful to use. It was just a tripod, and it was digging into my abdomen. But regardless, still using the 20mm lens on the Z cam here. For lighting, let's start with the background, so back into the bedroom. I used an Aperture 300X with a reflector, and it's bouncing into a white poster board bounce, like a 2x3 or so, as far as size. And it was at 100% at 5600 Kelvin. Now for the key light, I wanted a mixture of hard and soft light in this scene just in general. So I used an Amaran 100XS, again with the Lantern 90, and it was at 54%, I think. And it was in the shower, and it was just pointed toward me. Then to add in our hard light, I took the 300D with the reflector at 25%, and I again bounced it into the acrylic mirror. And then I had a cinefoil flag on the reflector to reduce the sharpness on the shadow. You can see my shadow on the wall, obviously, and I couldn't move or position myself any further to soften that or just get it out of frame. So the cinefoil really helped reduce how sharp that is. And I know it's still kind of sharp, but it was way worse. And finally, I wasn't getting any sort of contrast on my face at all because the doors that were behind me are white, the wall's white. So what I had to do was I took 2 black poster boards as flags, or negative fills rather, and I put them on my left, so camera right, and those are just taking that light away, so I had some sort of contrast on my face. That brings us to inside the coffee maker, and I love this shot. I really do. The point of view is a lot of fun, but also crafting the lighting for this was, in particular, a lot of fun and super interesting. Now the camera here had to change for obvious reasons. My Z-Cam can't fit in the coffee maker, and I wasn't about to tear my coffee maker apart to make it fit. So I used a GoPro, and I believe I have a GoPro 12, and I set it to super view, which is the widest angle of view on that particular GoPro. The first thing I did was set up a black negative fill on camera right, and again, I'm just using some 2x3 black poster board for that. For my key light, I use an Amaran T4C with the grid, and that was just pointed about 45 degrees toward my face. I then took a 100XS with a lantern 90, and that was directly behind me as just a soft room fill. And that worked out great, but I wanted to add a hard light source as well. It's a little too soft just filling the room. So what I did was took an Aperture 300X and attached a snoot onto the front, and I pointed it directly at the back of my head. Once those were set, it looked okay, at least the light on me looked okay. However, the coffee filter and everything was just complete darkness, and that didn't look great at all. So what I ended up doing was taking a 300D, and I made a snoot out of cinefoil, a really, really small one, and I bounced it into an acrylic mirror and pointed it directly into the coffee maker to bounce into the filter. And that made a huge difference in adding more visual interest into not just the coffee filter, but the whole image overall. So I'm very happy with the way this one looks. The next shot we have is a piece of toast going into the toaster, which would have been way cooler if I didn't mess it up. So what I ended up trying to do initially was taking a coat hanger and putting 2 pieces of bread into the coat hanger. And then I believe I gaff taped that to the lens. And the whole idea was to get the toast to like dive bomb into the toaster. Love the idea. 2 pieces of toast didn't work. So what I ended up doing was taking the 20mm lens with the Z-Cam, and I attached a +4 diopter filter on the front. Otherwise, I couldn't get any piece of the toast to be in focus, which is the whole point. And then for lighting, I took an Aperture 300D with the reflector, and it was at 100%, and that was bouncing into the acrylic mirror once again. I also used an Amaran 100XS with a lantern 90, and it was at 100%, and it was positioned on camera left as more or less a key light for the piece of toast. Then finally, I had an Aperture 300X with a snoot, also at 100%, and it was just scraping across the entire scene and on a little bit of the toaster, which is this harsh light you can see right here. Then we follow my fingers as I push the toast down into the toaster. The lens was again the 20mm with the +4 diopter or close-up filter. For lights, I used an Aperture 300D with a reflector, again bouncing into a acrylic mirror, and that was pointed directly down toward the toaster, and that's the harsh light you can see on my hand. And then behind me was the Amaran 100XS with the lantern 90, and that's just to fill in some of these harsh shadows that we see. And then after I had the light set, I did this about 1,000,000 times to get a clean take. Yeah, it was very exciting. Now we have the clock ticking as I'm waiting in anticipation for my toast to be ready. And this was just the Z-Cam with the 20mm on a tripod. And for light, I just took the 300D, bounced it into a mirror, and had it going straight onto the clock. The one thing that is worth noting for this shot is the entire front of the clock was basically a giant mirror, and it was reflecting everything. So what I ended up doing is taking a 4x floppy and walking it directly behind camera. And that was just to remove all these reflections. So if you have an issue with reflections in the future, or if you've had it in the past, this is one of those ways that you can almost completely eliminate or at least alleviate a bunch of the reflections that you're getting, especially if whatever you're shooting is black, like this clock was for me. Once the piece of toast pops up, we are again on a tripod with a 20mm lens. For lighting, I just had to use 2 lights. The first one is the 300D bouncing again into the mirror, and that is the harsh, hard light that you see on the back of the cabinets and everything in the background. Then I had the Amaran 100XS with the lantern 90 at 100%, and that was just blasting directly into the kitchen as a fill, just to eliminate some of those harsh shadows. We then cut to another fun shot, which is the POV from inside the refrigerator. For this, I again used the 20mm lens. I honestly wanted something wider, but 20 millimeters is the widest lens that I have in my Canon FD set. Something like a 14 would have been really nice here, but 20 millimeter is what I had to work with. For light, I took an Amaran T4C with a grid and placed it over top of the refrigerator, and that is to light my face, just like a top light. I then placed two lights behind me, the first being the Aperture 300X with a snoot, and that was as a hard edge, and you can see that on the back of my neck primarily here. I also had the Amaran 100XS with the Lantern 90 directly behind me as well. And then finally, I took the 300D with the reflector, again bouncing into the acrylic mirror, and that was my background light. So that's the light you can see bouncing off of the island, as well as the oven and the sides of the wall. Any place basically you see hard light in the background is that 300D. We then have another POV from inside something, this time a butter container. My wife was super stoked on this one, by the way. Just like inside the coffee maker, this was also the GoPro set to super view. And I actually had to dig a hole, a pretty deep hole into our butter for this to actually work so you can see the sides of it. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And lighting was the exact same as the coffee filter shot. So again, that is the Amaran T4C with a grid as the key, a 100XS with a Lantern 90 as a soft room fill, and then the 300D with a cinefoil snoot bouncing into the acrylic mirror. And this time, instead of bouncing into the coffee filter, it's bouncing into the butter. So yeah, POVs like this are a lot of fun, and I'd like to find more interesting ways to incorporate them into some of the more narrative work that I do. Now we come to spreading the butter and jelly onto the toast. I really enjoyed problem solving this one. I love solving problems. So the way I ended up solving this was taking a magic arm and then attaching a small rig super clamp to it. And that was to hold the knife in place. And the other side of the magic arm was just screwed onto the bottom 1/4-20 on my camera. Now I wanted more compression in this shot, so instead of the 20 millimeter, I went with the 50, and I still attached the +4 close-up filter on it. Otherwise, I wasn't able to get the knife in focus. And then for lights, I used the 100XS with the lantern at 100%, and that was my key light. And then I took the 300D, again, bounced it into the acrylic mirror, and it was at 75%, and that was the hard light that you can see on camera left. You can kind of see the specular highlights within the jelly right here. Not gonna lie, pretty proud of this one. It's just fun. It's fun to experiment, and this was a lot of fun to figure out. Then our final shot, I am holding the piece of toast and I take a couple bites into it. Now for this one, I originally planned on doing like the Snorri cam kind of thing, but it sucked. The way I had it set up was just awful. So all I did was just hold the camera as stable as I could. The lens I used was the 20 millimeter, and the lights was the 100XS with the lantern, which is at 100%. That was my key light, which is the light you see on camera left. And then I used the 300D with the reflector at 75%, once again bouncing into the mirror. And this is that background light. You can see everything splashing onto the cabinets, the backsplash, all that jazz back there. So that is how I shot toast. And yes, I did in fact eat a lot of toast while shooting this, but it's fine. It was delicious. It was great. But if you like this video, definitely check out this lighting breakdown as well. I think you will enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for spending just a little bit of time with me today, and I'll see you again very soon.